Many candidates say that if elected they will reduce governmental intrusion into voters' lives. Okay, many candidates say this. Many is a lot. Not necessarily most, though. So it might just be 10. It's subjective. So I don't know how many candidates actually say this, but apparently some say they'll reduce governmental intrusion. Sounds like conservatives. Okay, but voters actually elect politicians who instead promise that the government will provide assistance to solve their most pressing problems. Okay, so people don't vote for the conservatives. I'm not saying it's actually conservatives, but it's kind of what it sounds like. They vote for people who say that they will provide assistance to solve their most pressing problems. Okay, got it. Governmental assistance, however, costs money, and money can come only from taxes, which can be considered a form of governmental intrusion. So, these people who get elected, because voters actually elect ones who instead promise, wait a sec, they just promise that they will provide assistance. That doesn't mean that they actually will, right? I will save you. Who knows if they actually will, though. Governmental assistance costs money, and they end up basically doing something that will... Oh, it's not even governmental intrusion. No, these things are written so, like, lawyerly, not surprisingly. But notice it says, which can be considered a form of governmental intrusion. Okay, I'm glad that it can be considered that, but is it? You can think of it as that, but that's not the same as saying that it is that. So I don't even know if taxes are a form of governmental intrusion. I think they are personally, but not based on this argument. Thus, governmental intrusion into the lives of voters will rarely be substantially reduced over time in a democracy. Okay, there's at least two problems with this argument. One, the people who are elected are the ones who are promising to provide assistance, right? Well, promising to provide assistance is not the same as actually granting it or getting it done. So just because these people are elected doesn't necessarily mean that they'll end up doing these programs that cost money. And if they don't end up doing these programs that cost money, then maybe they won't tax us. And if they don't have to tax us more, then maybe they won't actually intrude into our lives, right? So when this says, thus, governmental intrusion into the lives of voters will rarely be substantially reduced, maybe it will be because people promise to do things and then they don't do them. I mean, yeah, that's totally possible. The other problem I see here is it says, which can be considered a form of governmental intrusion. I'm like, yeah, but is it? So, I mean, that's not as big of an issue. I think it's just weird wording. Ultimately, this person thinks it's a form of governmental intrusion, and as such, maybe it is, at least for the purposes of this argument. But I think the bigger issue here is they emphasize that these politicians are promising to provide this assistance, and that doesn't mean that they will. Which one following, if true, would most strengthen the editor's argument, showing that these politicians actually do what they say they're going to do? A, politicians who win their elections usually keep their campaign promises. Okay, that sounds like the answer. B, politicians never promise what they really intend to do once in office. That's the opposite. This would weaken the argument. C, the most common problems people have are financial. I don't think we care what kind of problems they have. If they have problems and governmental assistance costs money, then it doesn't matter what those problems are. They could be health problems, they could be, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Environmental, they still apparently cost money because governmental assistance costs money. That's just a premise in the argument. D, governmental intrusion into the lives of voters is no more burdensome in non-democratic countries than it is here. Okay, so it's no worse in North Korea. Okay, so it doesn't get any worse anywhere else, including North Korea. But that doesn't mean that it's good here, right? Or, what am I trying to say? I'm sorry. Just because it doesn't get worse somewhere else doesn't mean that it's not bad here, right? It could just be bad everywhere. So the fact that there's no more governmental intrusion anywhere else, it could be just as bad here. So this doesn't really shoot, I'm getting twisted around here. Thus, the conclusion is governmental intrusion into the lives of voters will rarely be substantially reduced. It's not going to go down. The fact that it's no worse anywhere else doesn't really have to do with how bad it is, whether it's going to go down here, right? Like, I'm not really sure how these other countries have anything to do with how bad it's going to be here now or in the future. Like, this seems irrelevant. E, politicians who promise to do what they actually believe ought to be done are rarely elected. This is like what they actually politicians who promise to do what they actually believe. This argument never talks about what they actually believe. If the ones who promise to do what they actually believe are rarely elected, then that seems like it would hurt the conclusion, right? In other words, people who tell the truth are rarely elected. So that means usually liars are being elected, or at least, well, see, it's not actually, if you promise something but you don't actually believe in it, that doesn't make you a liar, because you still might do it, right? This is a random, I don't want to get too controversial here, but sometimes politicians promise to do things that they don't honestly believe in, but they still end up doing them because it's what gets them elected, right? So I don't know that it really matters whether these people don't actually believe in what they promise. It doesn't have any effect on whether they're likely to keep that promise or not. I mean, maybe because they don't actually believe in it, they're less likely to keep it, but if anything, that would actually just hurt the conclusion, because it would suggest that the people who are promising governmental assistance don't actually believe in that governmental assistance and therefore won't implement it. And if they don't implement it, then it won't cost money and governmental intrusion will go down. So, if anything, answer choice E weakens the argument, but in reality I don't think it does anything at all. So, we're back to A. A is the answer.